George Nye, former Oklahoma governor and public servant of over 7 decades, passed away today at 98.
And tonight, as we take a look back on his life, we hope you learned something new about someone many of us knew very well.
KOCO's Olivia Hickey shares his story.
George Patterson Nye was born June 7, 1927 in McAlester, Oklahoma, to Wilbur and Irene Nye. He had 3 older siblings, all boys, and 1 younger sister. He was introduced to public service at a young age, delivering groceries from his father's store.
He used to deliver groceries to Carl Albert, the little giant of Little Dixie.
At just 14 years old, he knew he wanted to be governor, dedicating his life to serving Oklahomans. After graduating from McAlester High School, he joined the U.S. Navy in 1945.
When he was in boot camp, the Japanese surrendered, and George always liked to quip that when the Japanese heard he was in boot camp, they surrendered.
He then attended East Central State College. While studying to be a teacher, he planted roots in government affairs. He ran for and won a seat representing McAlester in the State House of Representatives. At the age of 22, the youngest person elected to the Oklahoma legislature at the time, kickstarting what would be a career of many firsts and onlys.
Governor Nye was the youngest elected to the Oklahoma House of Representatives. He was the youngest lieutenant governor and the youngest lieutenant governor in the nation at the time. He was the only person to serve as governor 4 times.
In 1963, he met his wife Donna. The couple raised 2 kids together, Michael and Georgianne. His governorship was marked by his efforts to recover from Oklahoma's economic downturn in the 1980s.
He knew how to recruit business, and remember back in the early 80s, while he was governor, the economy in Oklahoma really took a nosedive. The oil bust hit, we were having banks fail. So we needed all the help we could offer in recruiting new businesses to Oklahoma. But he was especially good at helping Oklahoma businesses grow.
The governor's list of firsts extended to the Oklahoma Supreme Court, where he appointed the first 2 female justices in state history, an appointment that broke the glass ceiling for many Oklahomans.
He did change my life. George and I started out as a history teacher, and he made history when he appointed Justice Alma Wilson and I, 2 women in a row. And it changed the history and makeup of the court in ways that were probably not anticipated. For example, my wonderful administrative assistant of 28 years, Vanessa Traylor, was the first African-American woman to be able to serve as an administrative assistant at the court. That would never have happened without George Nye.
He continued to serve the state after his term.
Whether it was president of the University of Central Oklahoma, or chairing a local committee, or championing a cause, he always put Oklahoma and Oklahomans first. His legacy will be that he is truly Oklahoma's biggest cheerleader.
Another notable accomplishment, the adoption of our state song, one of the most recognizable in the nation. His effort to make it the new state song faced pushback and was initially voted down. But George Nye had a plan. He called the original actor of Curly from Oklahoma and a popular all-girls choir from the Oklahoma University of Science and Arts and asked them to perform Oklahoma for the state legislature. The next day, when Nye asked for the motion to be reconsidered, something magical happened.
And Curly and the girls' choir break out into a rendition of Oklahoma.
You're doing fine, Oklahoma.
And he's packed the galleries, and people in the galleries stand up and start clapping, and everybody's getting enthusiastic, and they're singing this new song, Oklahoma. And they took a vote right after that, and the legislation passed.
A lifetime of service to his state and a legacy of compassion.
He cared so deeply and compassionately about others and wanted to help as many people as he could.
He was a good man. He was a good governor. He was just right down the middle of the road.
He was genuine in every respect, authentic in every respect.
There's no one that has more pride in Oklahoma than Governor Nye.
Reporting, Olivia Hickey, KOCO 5 News.
And I wanted to share this with you. I got this from his daughter, Georgianne. Others have always told me what a great man my father was, the amazing impact he had on the state of Oklahoma. To me, he was truly the best dad and granddad who loved his family and friends fiercely. A full look back on George Nye's life and legacy, what others have to say about his public service, right now at KOCO.com. Rest in peace.